my best friend grabbed my controller. Dude, you have to come to this party tomorrow. There's this girl going called Isabella, and I need you to wingman me. Isabella King. He nodded. Bro, that's the girl I've had a crush on since kindergarten. I know she used to have an awkward phase, but she's never gonna go for you now. I only want you there so you can make me look good. I looked down at my SpongeBob hoodie and sighed. Thanks, bro. You're the best. But deep down, I was secretly hoping he was wrong. The next night, I showed up in my only clean clothes, and Garfield smirked. You're dressed perfectly for the job, before disappearing into the crowd. So I opened up my settings app to pretend to look busy, and that's when a guy staggered over to me. Hey bro, wanna try this? It was my first social interaction with someone who wasn't Garfield. He was holding a green drink, and I couldn't help myself. Oh look, it's a kelp shake. Bro, is that a SpongeBob reference? He called his friends over, and I was ready for them to laugh at me. Yo, this guy just called your drink a kelp shake. And suddenly, they started patting my back. For once, people were laughing with me, not at me. What else you got? So I taught them the first step of my favorite dance. First, go like this, spin around, stop. Suddenly, 5 people were doing the bring it around town bubble dance from SpongeBob. I didn't even notice Isabella joining the circle until the crowd completely broke up and it was just us. That was so fun. But before I could respond, Garfield grabbed my arm and dragged me into the hallway. She asked me if you're single. You were supposed to be invisible. You're ruining everything. I pulled my arm free and walked out the door, and that's when I heard it. Hey, wait up. Isabella caught up to me on the sidewalk. You know, I used to have a SpongeBob phone case I took everywhere. Then I had a glow up, and suddenly everyone only wanted the cool version of me. There was even some guy at that party named Garfield who wanted to talk to me because of my glow up. She looked at me. You're the first person who made me want to bring the real one back. That night she came over, and we watched SpongeBob on my couch. She was wearing my hoodie. For 6 years after my brother died, I kept his Xbox controller on the couch next to me. Every Saturday he'd come in, ruffle my hair, and say, "Come here, little man," as he handed me the black controller and took the red one for himself. The first time I asked to be player 1, he wagged his finger and said, "No dude, player 2's the better seat. You get to watch someone you love have fun." I never asked again. I lived for Saturdays just to spend time with him. Then one spring he died. After that I played alone but would always put the red controller back on his cushion. It wasn't the same, but he was still there next to me in spirit. A year after I lost him, my little brother Noah was born. At 2, he reached for the red controller and I moved it to the armrest. At 3, he pointed at it and asked whose it was. I told him his brother's, and he asked who his brother was. I told him a good one. At 4, he asked to play every Saturday. I made excuses for a year. Then one morning he climbed up, put his hands on my knee, and said, "Please, just once." I didn't have anything left. I patted the cushion next to me and said, "Come here, little man." Noah scrambled up. I gave him the black controller and picked up the red one for the first time. "Can I be player 1? I wagged my finger and ruffled his hair. "No dude, player 2's the better seat. You get to watch someone you love have fun." Noah settled into the cushion with both hands on the controller. That's when I realized I was doing what my brother used to do. I looked down at Noah grinning at the screen. Ethan was right. It is the better seat. When the light turned green, I went to press the gas, but my foot wouldn't move. "Daddy, go," Mia said from the back seat, kicking my seat the way she did every morning when we stopped at the light 2 blocks from her school. Something was wrong with me, and I couldn't tell her. I tried again, and my foot still wouldn't move. The horn behind me started up, short beeps, then long ones, then one long blast that didn't stop. I squeezed the wheel as hard as I could, and my hand wouldn't even tighten. "Daddy," Mia said, but my head wouldn't turn. I tried to say her name, and my mouth wouldn't work. In the mirror, I watched a woman throw her own door open and march toward my window. My body started shaking, and I couldn't make it stop. The edges of my vision went black, and the mirror started to disappear. "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, what's wrong?" Mia's voice climbed each time. The woman got to my window screaming, "What is wrong with you?" Her eyes locked onto my face, and the screaming stopped. "Oh my God, can you hear me?" She pulled out her phone without taking her eyes off me. "I've got an active stroke, male, 40-something. Send everything." She got me out of the car and laid me on my side on the road. She kept her hand on my shoulder until the sirens came. I'd had a stroke at a green light, and she was a nurse on her way to work. She rode in the ambulance holding Mia's hand the whole way. I survived with some weakness on my right side. The doctors said another few minutes and I wouldn't have made it home. Mia still sends her a card every Christmas that just says, "Thank you for being mad at us." I woke up to 20 missed calls from my boss. I looked at the clock and saw that I should have woken up 3 hours ago, and now I was risking being late for my flight. I opened my boss's text. "If you missed the flight to the work meeting in New York, then you're fired. I'm sick of you being so flaky. This is your last chance." My flight was going to leave in 1 hour. When I got to the airport, I was panicking because I needed to find my gate number immediately. I was running around looking for it when an older man stopped me. "Excuse me, can you help me? I can't find my gate and I need help because I'm lost." I didn't know what to do, because I knew that if I said yes, I could miss my flight and lose my job forever. But the old old man looked really sad, and I knew he was vulnerable, so I decided to help him anyway. I'll help you find it. Let me see your ticket. He handed me his ticket and thanked me. His gate was on the other side of the terminal, and I had to guide him all the way there. With every step I took, I knew I was getting closer and closer to losing my job. And when I saw that I had 5 minutes until my plane started boarding, I had to abandon him. I'm sorry, I need to go. I hope this was helpful. I immediately turned around and sprinted towards my gate. I was 50 feet away when I saw the gate agent close the boarding doors. I tried to get her to hold them for me for 5 more seconds so I could make the flight. Wait, I need to get on the plane. The agent shook her head. I'm sorry, sir. Doors are closed. I sat down in defeat and watched my plane pull away from the gate. I felt my phone buzz. A text from my boss. Did you make the flight? I didn't know how to tell him that I wasn't going to make it. I put my head in my hands, thinking that everything was doomed. But 30 minutes later, everyone started screaming. I looked up. People were running to the windows crying. Others were covering their mouths, gasping loudly. Every TV screen in the terminal switched to breaking news. I saw the headline and couldn't move. It was showing the plane I was supposed to be on had crashed after takeoff with no survivors. The realization hit me. If I hadn't stopped to help the old man find his gate, I would have made the flight and I'd be dead. Then my boss called me. I answered. He yelled, "Did you make it on the flight?" My voice cracked. "No, thank God." He sighed in relief. "I don't even care about the meeting anymore. I'm just glad you're alive." I pulled up our group's slides knowing every single one was empty. It was our AP history final, a 5-person group presentation worth 30% of our grade. I split the work up and sent everyone their section. One kid pasted a random YouTube link and nobody else ever opened the Google Slides. So I built the whole thing myself because I wasn't about to fail over people who didn't care. The day before the presentation, my group was bragging to everyone about how good our project was going to be, like they actually did something. So that night I sent Mr. Callahan proof that I did all of it. He read it and didn't say a word. Then I saved my own copy, opened the group file, and deleted every single slide. Presentation day, my group walked up and the screen was empty. The first one tried to wing it but got our century wrong in her first sentence and stopped. The next kid rambled about something that had nothing to do with our project, and the class started laughing. Nobody else even tried. Then one of them turned around and pointed right at me. "This is your fault. You were supposed to handle all of this." Mr. Callahan set his pen down and faced the kid who said it. "Is that so?" He leaned back in his chair and turned to me. "Do you have anything?" I pulled out my flash drive, loaded my own slides, and presented every section start to finish without missing a word. Mr. Callahan gave me 100 and the rest of them zeros. The next week, he stood in front of the class. "All presentations are solo from now on." He turned to my old group. "You 4 owe me yours by Friday." After class, one of them shoved past me. "You deleted our slides." "No, I deleted my slides." I kept walking. "You guys never made any." My stepson showed me his recent messages with his dad and said, "My real dad is back and I choose him. You were just a placeholder." 10 years of teaching him to ride a bike, throw a baseball, and tie a tie flashed through my head, but his cold eyes set me straight. "Okay, I respect your choice," I said calmly. His younger brother Charlie watched the whole thing and ran over to hug me. "It's okay, Dad." Charlie glared at Joshua. "He left once, and he'll do it again. You know that, right?" Rick showed up Saturday in a rented BMW, and Joshua ran out with a packed bag. While Joshua loaded the car, Rick promised him a car for his birthday and college money. "You okay, Dad?" Charlie asked. He made his choice. "Want to build that bookshelf we've been planning?" Charlie and I spent the day in the garage while Rick bought Joshua an iPhone 15 and designer clothes. "He's the best dad I could ever ask for," Joshua told me when he was back. But 2 weeks later on his birthday, Rick texted, "Sorry buddy, can't make dinner. Work emergency." Joshua celebrated by himself at McDonald's. Rick promised Christmas in Aspen but texted, "Sorry kid, girlfriend doesn't want kids along." Charlie and I spent New Year's cooking mom's recipes while Joshua sat alone in his room after Rick canceled New Year's in Times Square. Then Joshua's graduation day arrived in May, and I didn't know if I could go until Charlie handed me his tie. "I want to see my brother graduate." We sat in the auditorium watching Joshua's head snap toward the door every time it opened, hoping Rick showed up. But he texted, "Something came up. Congrats though. Send pics." Joshua walked across the stage, face pale and tears in his eyes. After the ceremony, he found us in the parking lot. "You actually came?" "Charlie wanted to see you graduate," I said coldly. Charlie glared at Joshua. "You had a dad who loved you, and you threw him away for someone who doesn't even show up." Our roof started leaking after a massive flood, and my mom spent her entire paycheck to fix it. But when the contractor showed up, he took the money, then left to get his tools, and never came back. We waited 4 weeks, and our roof was still leaking, and he'd blocked Mom's number. I urged her to report the fraud, but she could barely speak English and didn't know how. I was furious, but when I realized he had an actual office, I got an idea. I drove over and applied for a job, and since he didn't recognize me, he hired me on the spot. For months, I mopped his floors and gained his trust, while secretly collecting invoices and finding out everything about his business. I drove to his clients' addresses to see if he ever did the work he was paid for. And at one of the houses, I saw an elderly woman with a broken window he should have fixed 2 weeks ago. She barely spoke English and reminded me of my mom. One day he pulled me aside smiling. "Remember, kid, single moms, people with no English, the elderly, they are easy money, collect and forget." He laughed, and I wanted to punch him because I realized he was only scamming the vulnerable people who he knew couldn't fight back. I forced myself to laugh with him. Then next day, while he was out for lunch, I snuck into his office. I logged into his computer and went straight to his business accounts. I pulled up every client he had scammed and sent all the money back directly into their accounts. I even compensated them for what they went through. He came back in and saw me at his computer. His account had 0 and freaked out. "I trusted you." He picked up his phone to call police, but I just laughed and pulled out all the evidence I'd collected of his scams. He went white as he realized he was screwed, and I told him, "Now, you're either going to shut down your business, or I'm the one calling the police." He immediately put down the phone and agreed. I immediately forced him to drive back to our house and fix my mom's roof. I did that for every person he had scammed, and after he'd fixed everything for free, I reported him for fraud anyway. While I was at the zoo, someone yelled, "Oh my God, he's gonna fall in." I turned around. "What? Who?" I realized my son Tommy wasn't next to me, and that's when I saw where she was pointing. He was climbing over the top of an enclosure. "Tommy, what the hell are you doing?" He looked over at me. "Look, Dad, I'm gonna feed them." Someone shouted, "They're gonna pull you inside. Get down from there." And that's when I saw the banana. I looked over and saw the sign, "Silverback Gorillas." I started pushing through the crowd, but everyone was just filming instead of helping. "Tommy, get down from there. Look, Dad, it's Donkey Kong." The huge gorillas were walking over to him now, wanting the banana. I finally pushed my way up to the glass, but Tommy was too high on top of the wall. The gorillas beat their chests, screaming for the banana. "Tommy, put the banana down and get off the fence." But he wasn't listening. He thought they were friendly. He started waving the banana around. The gorilla started jumping for it. My heart was racing. I had to do something. I started banging on the glass, trying to scare them away. "Hey, back off! Get away from him!" But banging on the glass only made things worse. The gorillas got more agitated. "Tommy, get the hell down right now! I'm gonna give them a snack, Dad." "Tommy, no!" He leaned forward, stretching his arm out as far as it could go, and the gorilla reached up. It didn't just grab the banana, it grabbed Tommy's entire arm. Tommy fell completely into the gorilla den. "Ah, Tommy, oh my God!" Everyone watched and recorded as both gorillas went absolutely insane. The zookeepers finally ran in, but just as I thought they were gonna save my boy's life, one of the zookeepers yelled, "Hey, stop, drop the banana." They completely ignored my son, and just as the gorilla held the banana above his mouth, they screamed, "Stop!" Tommy started crawling toward the zookeepers, reaching out for help, but they literally stepped around him like he wasn't even there. "What are you doing? Save my son!" The gorilla almost took a bite, but the zookeepers fired tranquilizers. It immediately fell over and hit the ground, and Tommy ran outside crying. I turned to the head zookeeper. "What the hell was that? Why didn't you save my son?" The zookeeper had the audacity to look annoyed. "Sir, a regular banana can contaminate these gorillas. Do you know how expensive they are?" I couldn't hold back. I swung at the zookeeper's face, blood going everywhere. I didn't think that would be enough to put him into a coma, but he deserved it because Tommy can't even look at a banana anymore without having a panic attack. She slid into the passenger seat with the same smile she'd worn both times she failed me before. Her pen clicked twice as she set the clipboard on her knee. "All right, driver's license test, 3rd attempt. Go ahead and adjust your mirrors for me." I tilted the rear view, and the dash cam light blinked red behind it. The one my dad made me keep on after she'd failed me twice on stuff she made up. He was on the bench outside the DMV watching us pull out. A third fail meant another summer at Subway, saving up $80 I didn't have. I counted 3 full seconds at the stop sign on Linden before her pen scratched the first mark. That was a California stop, didn't even slow down for it. Noted. She told me to turn with 30 feet of road left, and I had to stomp the brake to make it. That was a hesitation, failure to commit to a directional change. Noted. A yellow light caught me at the next intersection, and I made a clean stop, which sent her hands slamming the dash. "What are you doing? You don't stop for a yellow. You go through it." She marked the next mistake on her clipboard before her hands had left the dashboard. "That's a failure to maintain traffic flow right there." Noted. She kept writing as I drove the rest of the way back. As I pulled into the spot, she clicked her pen one last time. And of course there was the speed, going 42 and a 35 all the way down Linden. Noted. I'd been doing 33. She tore the failed sheet off her clipboard and held it out without a word. I took it, then reached up and tapped the dashcam screen. Her own voice came out of the speaker. "That was a California stop. Didn't even slow down for it." Noted. The GPS readout on screen showed 33 the whole stretch she'd called 42. Her face went white. She lunged for the mirror and her seatbelt locked and yanked her back into the seat. "Turn that off. Turn it off." Dad was already walking across the lot toward the car. I opened my door and stepped out. "Mirrors are perfectly adjusted, sweetheart." Dad pulled the dash cam off the mirror and held it up as he walked her back inside. The supervisor watched the footage twice and fired her before we left the building. She was still crying at her desk when they escorted her out, clipboard in her lap, pen clicking in her hand. I had my license 3 days later. That Saturday, I drove through town and spent spotted her sitting alone on a park bench near the DMV. I rolled the window down. I mimed writing in a notepad. Noted. I flicked her off and drove away. I became my school's hero for 1 minute before everyone watched what happened next. I don't play around when it comes to Halloween, so during our school's Halloween dance, I dressed up in real firefighter gear from my dad's closet. Real jacket, real boots, real helmet. I strutted around the gym like I owned the place, until the fog machine popped like a toaster and the fire alarm went off. Everyone cheered, thinking it was part of the show, until I smelled burnt plastic. Teachers started waving their arms, telling everyone to stay calm, but I noticed the orange extension cord powering the machine didn't stop at the wall. It ran out the side doors and down the hallway toward the science wing. Then someone near the door yelled, "Smoke in the hallway," and teachers started shouting for everyone to evacuate. Real sirens started wailing outside and fire trucks pulled up. The crowd poured into the parking lot while firefighters rushed through the main doors. That's when one of them spotted me standing near the entrance in full gear. "You, with us!" he shouted. "We're clearing the east wing." I opened my mouth to say I'm just a student, but he shoved a flashlight into my hand and pushed me forward. The hallway was dark and filled with smoke. We followed the orange cord past the lockers until it disappeared under Mrs. Carter's classroom door. One of the firefighters reached for the handle and jerked back. "Hot," he said, then looked at me. "Hit it!" But I only had my foam axe. I swung as hard as I could and it bounced off with a pathetic squeak. The firefighter grabbed it, swung himself, and the foam bent in half. He stared at it, muttered, "These damn budget cuts," and tossed it aside. That's when someone shouted from down the hall and he waved to the others. "Forget this door. We'll circle back once we've got tools." They started heading back down the hall, but then I heard it. A squeaky wheel spinning frantically. This was Mrs. Carter's room, and the class pet Mr. Nibbles was still inside. I turned back to the door. The handle was glowing red. I wrapped my jacket sleeve around my arm and threw my shoulder into the bottom panel until it cracked open. Smoke poured out and choked me instantly. The hamster cage was on the counter, and tiny flames were eating the papers around it. I grabbed the melted cord with my sleeve and yanked it from the wall. A spark bit through the fabric straight into my skin, and I screamed, but kept pulling until the plug came loose. I grabbed the cage with my smoking sleeve and the metal seared into my palm. I could smell my skin burning. My lungs felt like they were filled with glass, and my vision was going black around the edges, but I ran. When I burst through the side door, I collapsed face first onto the concrete and threw Mr. Nibbles onto the grass so I wouldn't crush him. I could hear cheering as hands grabbed me, and someone pulled off my helmet. A firefighter was staring down at me. "Kid, you're a hero." That's when I heard the scream. I turned my head and watched a hawk swoop down, grab Mr. Nibbles in its talons, and fly away. I walked outside to find my car covered in red paint, and the word cheater keyed into the hood. Now I wasn't even in a relationship, so I had no idea who would do this. I went to ask my neighbors if I could use their camera to see who did this, but then I saw his car was also covered in red paint. The word cheater keyed on the hood. I knocked on his door, and when he saw what happened, he also told me it couldn't have been his wife. We walked together to the house nearby and saw another car with red paint and cheater on the hood. So we recruited the third guy, who also had no idea, and we kept walking. But then we found the fourth car just like ours, except this time the owner of it was sitting on the curb crying. He asked why we were here, and when we showed him our cars, he freaked out and immediately started apologizing. He explained that last night his wife found out about his affair, so she got drunk and destroyed his car as revenge. However, she drank too much and forgot that she ruined the car, so she went out and found a new car, and thinking it was his, she destroyed it. But then she forgot again, and repeated this 2 more times. My cousin ripped open all of my presents at my 8th birthday party. I was extremely angry, but right before I could confront her, my dad pulled me aside. "Breathe, son. Don't act on your anger. Instead, open this gift I got you." Inside the box was a small jar filled with water, and beside it was an ink pen. "Dad, what is this?" He smiled warmly. "From now on, every time you get angry at something, I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to pour a drop of ink from the pen into the cup of water." I stared at him, and I was extremely confused. But before I could say anything, his face turned serious. "Just do it." That night, I was so angry I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how my cousin opened the Pokemon cards I'd been waiting months for, and I almost dripped all the ink from the pen into the water like my dad told me to. The next morning at school, I saw her giving out my cards to the cool kids at school, and everyone loved them. I felt angry because I knew that should have been me instead of her, and I dripped more ink into the water. In the cafeteria, my best friend chose to sit with her instead of me. I filled the jar with ink until it was full, and as soon as I got home, I handed the jar to my dad. "Dad, your weird ink jar water method isn't working." I'm even more angry now than I was on my birthday. I expected him to apologize, or to agree that his method was dumb, but instead, he handed the jar back to me. "Drink it." I had no idea what was going on, or what he was talking about. "What are you talking about, Dad?" "That jar of ink water represents every angry thought that you've had over the last 48 hours. Drink it." I looked down at the black liquid and felt disgusted. "No, Dad, that would poison me and make me sick." "Son, that's what holding on to anger does. It's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get hurt or die." Lesson learned. I went to try on the VR headset I'd just gotten for Christmas, but my parents yanked it off my head. You know the rules. Your little sister gets to go first. My sister smiled wickedly, and they put the headset on her. She grabbed the controllers from my hands and ran to her room, locking herself in and playing until the night. The next morning, she grabbed the VR again and went to her room, but when I walked in, she wasn't even playing it. It was just sitting in the corner while she scrolled her phone. I went to grab it, but she immediately put it on and grabbed the controllers, yelling, "Mom, he's trying to take the headset when I'm not done with it." My mom rushed in and kicked me out of the room, not listening to a word I said. My sister smiled at me from behind and took the headset off immediately, going back to her phone. Every day after that, she'd take my headset before I even woke up and would only put it on as soon as I came into her room. It had been 3 weeks, and I hadn't even tried it once, so one day, I had enough. I took all my Christmas money and bought a pair of ice skates. I put them on and announced loudly, "I'm so excited for my new skates. I'm going to ice skate at the nearby rink." Immediately, my parents and my sister came running. You know the rules. Your little sister gets to go first. They pried my skates off my feet and handed them to my sister, and she smiled and laughed. What she didn't know is I'd made the blades smooth. They wouldn't grip the ice at all, and she'd fall immediately. And when she came back an hour later, she was sobbing. Both her wrists were bent completely the wrong way. She had tumbled the second she got on the ice, landing directly on her wrists. Both her arms were put in casts, and she cried about the pain. But I just simply smiled at her, then walked to her room, took my VR headset, and finally plugged it in. My parents had no choice but to let me play, as my sister could no longer use her hands to pretend to hold the controllers, or to even scroll her phone. "There's this girl at school I really like, Dad. I need your help because you always pull baddies." I stared at my son. "What's a baddie?" "She's just a pretty girl, Dad. Please." I sat him down at the table. "Okay, tomorrow in class, just smile at her. If she smiles back, we're in business." He wrote down every word I said, and I just hoped my son's heart wouldn't get broken. And the next day, he came home grinning ear to ear. "Dad, you're the best. She smiled at me today. With teeth." I high-fived him. "Good sign. Now tomorrow, ask her for a small favor. Borrow a pencil. Anything. It'll make her notice you even more." After school, he ran through the front door. I asked to borrow a pencil, and she gave me 2 and winked at me. I leaned back in my chair. "She likes you. Ask her to the dance." He practiced what he'd say in the mirror that night and left for school the next morning, looking like a kid on a mission. And that afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. "Good morning. This is your son's teacher. I just wanted to let you know that your son asked me to the dance today. It was very sweet but highly inappropriate." I got home and found him face down crying on his bed. "I never should have trusted you. You got my heart broken." I sat on the edge of his bed. "Son, it's not my fault you never told me you were into cougars." The new kid raised his hand in geography. "Time zones are a government conspiracy to control when we sleep." "Incorrect. The Earth rotates and Brody cut her off." "No, the sun moves above US like a spotlight. Look it up." But when she pulled up satellite images, he just waved his hand. "All edited. NASA admits they composite their photos. Do your own research." A few kids laughed, but his crush Nola whispered, "He's actually kind of brave for saying what he thinks." Brody's whole face changed when he heard that. Mrs. Kowalski stopped arguing. "All right, Brody. Friday, you present your evidence to this class. Every source, every slide. Show us everything you've got." Brody looked straight at Nola. Finally, someone willing to hear the truth. When Friday came, Brody walked to the front like he was about to change the world. He pulled up his first slide, a blurry screenshot from a YouTube channel, and tapped the screen. "This physicist right here, he has degrees from MIT, and he exposed gravity as a lie. The Earth is accelerating upward. That's the real reason we stick to the ground." A kid in the front row burst out laughing. Brody held up a finger. "Laugh now. You won't be laughing when you see the rest." Next slide was a photo of the ocean. He spread his arms wide. Exhibit B. If the Earth was a ball, you'd see the bend from any beach. Ask yourself why nobody ever has. Third slide was a physics equation with half of it crossed out. This proves the Earth cannot be a sphere. I didn't make this up. It's basic math. Nola put her head on her desk. Brody pointed at her. "That right there is the reaction of someone whose eyes are being opened. Any questions?" Mrs. Kowalski stood up for the first time since the presentation started. "Brody, that MIT physicist from your first slide. Pull the full video up." Brody grinned and clicked back to slide 1. "You want to see more?" "Happy to." She walked to the screen. "Play it from the beginning. Not your screenshot. The actual video." Brody shrugged and hit play. "Welcome back, everyone. Today we're dismantling the most common flat Earth claims using basic physics." Every head in the class turned toward Brody. His hand shot toward the mouse, but Mrs. Kowalski was already next to it. The video kept going, pulling apart the exact arguments he'd just made, slide by slide, point by point. Brody sat down without a word. Mrs. Kowalski looked at him. "You told us all week to do our own research. Maybe next time, start with yours." She closed the laptop. The bell rang, and Nola walked past his desk without even looking at him. "I told my adopted kids Santa was coming tonight, and they crawled under the bed. I got down on the floor and looked under the bed. They were pressed against the wall, holding onto each other." "Hey, what's going on?" My daughter's voice was shaking. "Please don't let him take us to another family. We like it here." My son pulled her closer. "People who come at night are bad, Dad." I laid lay there on the floor with them. I didn't reach in. I didn't pull them out. I just stayed. Santa doesn't take kids away. He brings them things. My daughter loosened her grip on her brother and looked at me. What does he bring? Presents, wrapped up with bows on top. And he eats the cookies you leave him and drinks all the milk. My son's eyes got wide. He eats our food? Only if you leave it out for him. They looked at each other. My son slid out first, and my daughter followed. I walked them to the window, and they pressed their faces against the glass. Is he out there? Not yet. He waits until you're asleep. They kept checking anyway. Every few minutes, one of them would run back and look. When I tucked them in, my son grabbed my sleeve. Dad, if he comes, you won't let him take us, right? I put my hand on his head. Nobody's taking you anywhere. Not tonight. Not ever. I almost broke down because they didn't know who Santa was. I knew what I had to do. I stayed up until 2 in the morning. I pressed boots into flour on the carpet. I bit the cookies and poured out half the milk. I wrapped everything twice because I didn't know how. The next morning, I woke up to both of them screaming from the living room. They found the footprints first. They ran to the plate and the cookies had bites missing and the glass was empty. My daughter grabbed her brother's arm and they just stood there staring at the tree. They didn't touch the presents. My son looked at me with the biggest eyes I'd ever seen. He came and he didn't take us. My daughter was shaking. He's real. He's real. My neighbor chainsawed my treehouse while we were out, so I listed his house on Zillow for $1. We came home Sunday to a pile of wood where my treehouse used to be and the fence cut open where Doyle had come through. Mr. Doyle was on his porch holding the chainsaw and grinning. My dad walked up to the porch. You destroyed my son's treehouse. Doyle shrugged. Tell your kid to stay off my fence next time. He went inside. Through the front window, I watched his wife look up from the couch and smile at him. Knew you'd handle it. That night, I sat at my laptop, pulled photos off Doyle's old Facebook, and listed his house on Zillow for $1 with an open house Saturday at 9. By midnight, the listing had 11,000 views. Friday night, a realtor pulled into Doyle's driveway and knocked, and when Doyle answered in his bathrobe, she smiled at him. Hi, I have a buyer who saw your listing. Are you the owner? Doyle told her there was no listing and to get off his property, but she just held up her phone showing the Zillow page. His own house, listed for $1 with an open house the next morning. Doyle ripped the phone out of her hand, scrolled through it, and slammed the door so hard, a window cracked. By Saturday sunrise, cars were lining the street, and by 9 there were over 100 people on his lawn. Families with kids, a guy carrying cash in a grocery bag, a college kid yelling, "I'm pre-approved," at nobody in particular. Doyle was on his porch screaming, "My house is not for sale," while strangers walked through his garden taking photos. He grabbed the chainsaw and yanked the cord, but nothing happened. He yanked again, and the engine stayed dead, while the crowd kept walking past him like he wasn't there. His wife stepped outside in her robe and asked what was happening, so someone in the crowd handed her a phone with the listing on it. She read it twice, then she looked at Doyle. "You put our house up for $1? Doyle opened his mouth and nothing came out. She held the phone up. "These are your photos and descriptions. I can't believe you would do this." Then she walked back inside and slammed the door behind her. Behind Doyle, a bidding war erupted on the lawn, and a man in a suit pushed through the crowd waving a single dollar bill in the air shouting, "I have the asking price," while 6 people tackled him. From my bedroom window, I watched Doyle alone on his porch with no chainsaw and no wife. The dollar bill landed at his feet. My dad charged me a quarter every time I cussed for 16 years, and I never figured out why until my wedding day. It started when I was 7. I yelled "fudge," dropping my cereal bowl, and Dad pointed at the beat-up peanut butter jar on the counter. "That's a quarter, kid. Drop it in. Fudge isn't a curse," I said. He kept his hand out until I paid. By 10, I was convinced I could outsmart him with workarounds. I tried beach at dinner, and Dad's hand came up. "Fakes count too, kid. You know the drill." I tried shoot, and that cost another quarter. I went bigger with "this blows D," and another quarter hit the jar. He never even looked up from his plate. In high school, I changed strategies and figured if I went clean, Dad would finally crack and tell me what the money was for. 3 weeks of biting my tongue, and I sat down at dinner and asked him straight up. He just shrugged. "It's saved up safe somewhere. That's all you need to know." I stopped asking after that. The first real job I got paid 6 figures, so I walked in and told Dad his quarter system was beneath me now. Dropped a shoot on purpose right in front of him. He doubled the rate without missing a beat. "Welcome to inflation, son. Prices go up everywhere," was all he said. By our engagement dinner, I'd given up trying to beat him entirely. I raised a glass and toasted, "This beach is gonna suck my D if she ever leaves me." Dad's hand came up across the table. "That's 4 quarters now. Inflation again. Pay up." My fiance's dad nearly choked on his wine. I moved out thinking I'd finally escaped, but the system followed me. Every cuss on the phone with Mom would trigger a Venmo from Dad for $1 within the hour. Wedding day. Dad walked into the suite carrying the same jar from the kitchen counter and pressed an envelope into my hand. Inside was a check for $60,000. "Down payment on a house, kid. 16 years of you running your mouth paid for it." My legs gave out, and he waited until I could breathe again. "Your grandfather did this exact same thing to me growing up. Kept every cent. Bought himself a boat with my money. I swore the day I had a son I wouldn't do that to him." The only word I could get out through the tears was "fudge." His hand came up between us. That's 4/4. I was flying a plane when a woman screamed from the cabin. "Oh my God, I need to speak to the captain right now." The flight attendant walked into the cockpit rolling her eyes. "That's the 17th time she's pressed the button. She insists on talking to you about an urgent safety concern." I had my co-pilot take over and walked back. She stood up and pointed at me in front of the whole cabin. "You're flying too high." My ears popped, and that only happens when you exceed legal altitude limits. "Ma'am, ears pop from normal pressure changes." She pulled out her phone and showed me a compass app. "This proves we're at 50,000 feet. That's a compass. You're lying to cover up your reckless flying. I demand you descend to 1,000 feet. That would put us through buildings. That's propaganda from big aviation to justify expensive fuel charges." She went back to her seat, but 5 minutes later, the flight attendant was back. The woman had written a formal complaint on napkins and gotten 3 other passengers to sign it by telling them we were in danger. One of the guys who signed it walked up to me. "Is it true we're flying illegally high?" I showed him the altitude on my tablet. That's exactly what someone flying too high would say. 20 minutes later, she hit the call button again. She had a tape measure pressed against the window. "Based on my calculations, we're at 70,000 feet. That's basically space. How are you measuring through a window?" "Special vision. Years of yoga." She stood up and announced she was making a citizen's arrest on me for reckless endangerment and walked toward the cockpit holding plastic zip ties she'd brought from home. The air marshal stepped in and she pointed at him. "You're in on it. You're all in the pocket of Big Cloud." She turned around and went straight for the emergency exit to let in ground-level air because the high altitude was making everyone stupid. A flight attendant tackled her before she reached the handle. We made an emergency landing in Dallas. As they walked her off, she demanded a drug test for me, specifically for altitude drugs. The cop asked what those were. "If you don't know, you're not qualified to arrest me." Her formal complaint is the last thing I'll ever frame. The pilot's refusal to fly lower proves he's hiding something, probably a second secret altitude. I'm a flying instructor, and one day, while in the air with a man taking a one-on-one lesson, he reached into his shoe and pulled out a knife. "Fly exactly where I say, or you're never coming home to your kids again." My whole body froze. He placed a piece of paper with coordinates in front of me and pressed the blade against my neck. I asked him how he got the knife in here, and he told me the security guard never actually bothered to scan him. His face was completely calm. No sweat, no shaking. Like he'd already decided how this was going to go. He told me to just fly, so I did. I tried asking him where we were going, but he didn't answer. Just sat behind me with the blade against my seat, staring straight ahead. Every few minutes he'd check his watch and tell me, "Fly faster. I don't have time." I thought about grabbing my phone, but the second my eyes moved to it, he pressed the knife against my neck hard enough to draw blood. One wrong move. I realized I had no choice and just flew. When we finally reached the coordinates, it was just a field. I asked him if this was actually it, and he told me aggressively to just land. I brought the plane down, and my heart was pounding out of my chest. But the second we stopped, everything about him changed. He put the knife down. His hand started shaking. He opened his wallet and shoved every bill inside into my hand. "Thank you. I'm so sorry for this, but my daughter is in emergency surgery at that hospital and she might not make it." He pointed behind me at the hospital across the field. This was the quickest way to get to her. He jumped out and sprinted across the field. I went home that day and fired my security guy. The doctor set a 30-minute timer next to my mom's hospital bed and told me if she didn't move by 0, they were letting the family go through with it. "Your grandparents signed the papers this morning. I'm giving you 30 minutes alone with her before I honor them." He pulled the curtain shut and left us alone. She'd been here 11 years. I was 10 when she went under, and now I was 21, sitting in the same chair I sat in the first day. I pulled it close and took her hand. Before all this, she used to tuck me in every night and sing me a lullaby she made up about never leaving me. She told me it was a promise. The timer on the tray ticked to 29 as I leaned in close. "Mom, it's me. I need you to come back." 28 minutes. I told her about the day she taught me to ride my bike, her hand on the back of the seat down the driveway. She let go, and I made it 10 feet before crashing into the Petersons' mailbox. She ran over laughing and brushed gravel off my elbow. "I'm right here, baby. I'm right by your side." 22 minutes, and the line on her monitor never twitched. So I told her about the night I wet the bed when I was 7, and she snuck me into the bathroom and washed the sheets in the tub at 3 in the morning so Dad would never find out. "Our secret baby," she whispered into my ear. 15 minutes, and the monitor still didn't move. So I told her she had a granddaughter with eyes just like hers, who pointed at her picture every night before bed. 8 minutes, and her line was still flat. I grabbed her hand. "Mom, you promised you'd always be by my side. You sang it to me every night for 10 years. But the line on her monitor never moved an inch. At 2 minutes, I just sat there with no idea what else to give her. I climbed up onto the bed and laid down next to her, the way she used to lay down next to me when I was little. I sang her lullaby quiet into her ear, the one she said was a promise. Through the rain and through the night, I'll always be by your side. Her hand twitched, and the monitor jumped behind me. Her eyes opened for the first time in 11 years and found mine. She kept her promise. My daughter almost died on Christmas Eve because I told her the elf on the shelf was real. We rented a cabin up in Montana so our 5-year-old could see real snow on Christmas for the first time. We strung up lights and hung stockings on the fireplace, and the last thing I set up was the elf on a shelf right above the fireplace. I knelt down next to her and pointed up at it. If the elf ever falls off, he has to walk all the way back to Santa through the snow, and he won't come back until next Christmas. She didn't just believe me. I walked past the shelf one morning and caught her on a step stool whispering to it with her eyes closed. She set a cup of tea next to it every night before bed. She wouldn't even breathe near the shelf. For 3 days, that cabin felt like the most perfect Christmas we'd ever had. 2 nights before Christmas, I woke up at 5 a.m. to a freezing breeze coming from downstairs. My wife and I rushed down, and the sliding door was wide open with snow blowing across the floor. I ran to her room, empty. Her coat was still hanging by the front door. Back in the living room, the elf was lying on the floor, and a cup of cold tea was sitting on the shelf where it used to be. My wife found a crumpled napkin by the door. In messy crayon, it said, "I'll be back soon, Mommy and Daddy. I have to help the elf walk back to Santa so he can come back for Christmas." She was out there in the snow at 5 years old doing exactly what I told her would happen. I ran barefoot trying to get a signal on my phone, and after what felt like forever, one bar popped up and I called 911. They came fast. A firefighter found her in the woods curled up with no coat, and her lips were already turning blue. They rushed her inside and she made it. But ever since that night, she hasn't been able to hold on to long-term memories. Every Christmas, I put the elf away before she can see it. Last year, she found the box, pulled it out, and held it up to me. "Daddy, what is this?" I knocked out the smallest, weakest kid in school. While I was bench pressing, he cracked my ribs with a 5-pound dumbbell and smiled. That was Chester. He was 4'11", 85 pounds, and was the worst bully I ever met. His 2 brothers were 6'6", 300 pounds of pure muscle. Nobody touched Chester because they were terrified of his big brothers. I told the teacher, but he never believed that Chester had the strength to actually hurt anyone. I walked around with 2 cracked ribs for 3 months and couldn't laugh without wincing. A week later, my history teacher stepped out. Chester whispered into my ear, "Have you ever felt a tiger's claw?" Then he stabbed a pencil an inch deep into my back. I bled out onto the floor and everyone gasped. I needed 7 stitches. My teacher asked the class if anyone saw it. Every single student looked away. Chester smiled again. He was loving this power. PE baseball. Chester slammed a metal bat across my knee. I limped for a month. I still feel it when it rains. I didn't tell my mom. I didn't tell anyone. I knew I had to handle this myself. So I started kickboxing. 5 days a week for 6 months straight. I sparred with semi-pros. Got beaten up badly at first. Then slowly started landing shots and earned their respect. I stored every one of Chester's hits in the back of my mind. I had a college scholarship and couldn't afford to risk losing it. So I waited for the last day of school. I walked up to him and said, "Hey Chester, have you ever felt a tiger's claw?" He looked confused. Before he could say a word, I threw everything. Punches, kicks, elbows, and laid him out on the concrete. Unconscious, bleeding out of his smug face. A crowd gathered and went completely silent. Then his 2 brothers pushed through the crowd and got in my face. "Try that shit on us. Go ahead, try it." I looked up at both of them and said, "You might kill me, but I'll take one of you with me to the grave. I swear it." They went quiet, glanced at each other, then walked away. For as big as they were, they had never actually been tested. Chester had 17 broken bones and ate through a straw for 4 months. No charges were pressed because even his own parents knew he had it coming. When I think about that day, I still get the warm and fuzzies. The girls from my class screamed because a famous singer was coming to visit our high school. He was supposed to get here any minute, but when I saw our teacher, Mr. Brown, in the hallway, he looked nervous. He ran down the hallway, and I thought, how cool can this celebrity be? But when we finally walked into the gym, as soon as we got inside, they slammed the doors behind us. Police officers were waiting inside, telling us to sit down. We were all really confused, but when police dogs started searching us, I knew something was wrong. Then, our principal yelled, "Everyone with a gray shirt, come down immediately." They all walked down, and the cops took them outside. Now we were scared. We had to sit there for hours, not even getting to eat lunch, and people were furious. One guy tried to fight one of the cops, but they slammed him on the ground and put him in handcuffs, telling everyone to stay calm. People were crying, calling their parents saying they were scared, but they couldn't even get to us. Police were completely surrounding the building. "Just tell us what's happening." The principal finally grabbed the microphone. He was sweating, and we could tell he was scared. "Students, there is currently an active bomb threat in the bathrooms. Mr. Brown confirmed it. Nobody is allowed to leave." Everyone went completely silent and started freaking out. They started flooding towards the exits. "Let us out," but the police were tackling them. They were fighting the cops. Parents started trying to break down the doors, and everyone was panicking. But when one guy stood up, Mr. Brown saw his gray shirt under his hoodie. There he is!" They grabbed him and rushed him out, yelling at him to admit he did it. He yelled that didn't know what they were talking about. They were furious. But just as the officer was about to swing, the door burst open. A detective yelled, "Wait! Stop!" Everyone froze. She ran in holding an iPad and showed us the footage. And that's when we found out what happened. Turns out, Mr. Brown completely misunderstood when he overheard that student telling another boy in the hallway, "I'm so gonna blow up the bathroom later today." I punched the autistic kid in school. My little sister transferred here after being bullied so badly at her last school. She stopped talking for 2 months. The night before, my mom pulled me aside. If anything happens to her here, I'm pulling her out for good. On her first day, I saw Terrence grab a girl and shove her face into a water fountain. A teacher ran over, but Terrence started rocking. "I can't help it. I have autism." She walked away. The girl lost 2 teeth, and nobody did anything. Then Terrence noticed my sister. I turned a corner, and he had her pinned against the lockers, telling me to relax, that they were just talking. He bumped my shoulder walking past. "You can't touch me. I'm untouchable." I recorded everything on my phone and brought it to the principal. He watched the videos, then deleted them off my phone and threatened to punish me if I made another accusation. I didn't tell him I'd already sent everything to my mom. Terrence found out I reported him and told my sister it didn't work, that nothing ever does. My sister stopped eating. I could hear her crying through the wall every night. I found her in the library. "I want to go back to my old school, please." That night, I asked my mom for one more chance. She nodded, but I saw her pull out her laptop the second I left the room. The next morning, I planted myself outside my sister's class. Terrence walked up and dared me to hit him. My sister walked out. He shoved me into the wall and grabbed her. Her head cracked against the lockers. I am on him before I realize I am moving. My fist connects with his jaw. "I have autism. You can't touch me." The principal drags us to the office and slams an expulsion form in front of me. Terrence is sitting there smirking. His mom bursts in screaming about suing. Then my mom walks in, terrifyingly calm. "Show me his diagnosis." Dead silence. The paperwork, the doctor's report, anything. Terrence's mom's mouth opens, but nothing comes out. My daughter stopped eating, cried herself to sleep every night. I have every text, every ignored email, and copies of the videos you deleted off my son's phone. You want to explain that to the school board? The principal rips my expulsion form in half. Terrence jumps out of his chair screaming, but his mom grabs him and drags him out. Terrence never came back. He tried the same thing at his new school. Someone else's brother wasn't as patient as me. I'd been fighting the same tie for an hour, and picture day was in 20 minutes. I had a YouTube tutorial paused on my phone, but the tie was wrinkled from being pulled and undone 20 different ways. Dad tied them for me every morning, so I never bothered to learn, but he died of cancer 3 weeks ago, and now I was on my own with it. I threw the tie on the floor and laid back down. Since I couldn't figure it out, I'd just fake being sick and skip picture day. My little brother Eli walked in holding a juice box and stopped when he saw the tie on the floor and me lying in bed. He set the juice box on the dresser and picked the tie up. "Get up." I sat up, and he stepped between my knees and flipped the collar of my shirt. He started looping the silk around itself like he'd done it 1,000 times. "Where did you learn to do this?" Dad showed me. He pulled the wide end through every night after dinner. After he got sick, he cinched the knot up under my chin. He couldn't sit up, so I had to practice on the lamp. He smoothed the tie down with both palms and looked up at me. He said you'd need somebody to do it for you. He didn't want it to be nobody. Eli stepped back. "Good?" I tried to say yes, but nothing came out, so I just nodded and dragged my sleeve across my face. In the mirror behind him, Eli stood in the spot where Dad used to stand. Dad spent the last 2 months of his life teaching an 8-year-old to tie a Windsor knot so I'd never tie it alone. I lost the game of beer pong and got dared to prank the girl I liked in the most extreme way I could. This was back in 2016 when those killer clown videos were going around, and my friends decided this was the perfect method. We got the scariest looking clown costume, then completed it with a plastic machete that looked totally real. I threw on the Pennywise mask and headed out. Samantha was alone at the bus stop, and I started mentally preparing to forever traumatize the girl I liked. But then suddenly, a man I'd never seen walked up to her. He sat beside her, and when she moved away, he moved with her. Soon, he was grabbing her hand, and I could tell the situation wasn't good. I looked in his back pocket and saw a knife, and knew I had to act. I emerged from the bushes and walked over in my killer clown costume, dragging the tip of my fake machete along the ground. The man saw me first, and his eyes went wide. He instantly removed his hands from her thighs and stood up and ran away. Samantha exhaled in relief, but when she turned around, she screamed in fear. I thought about continuing the prank, but decided enough was enough and took off my mask. When she saw it was me, her jaw dropped. I told her I was going to prank her, and what happened was just a happy accident. So she took my fake sword and smacked my head with it. I sat with her until her bus came. Every time we heard a knock on the front door, my dad would yell, "Stealth mode," and we had 30 seconds to kill every light in the house. My brother and I would race through the rooms, flipping switches, yanking cords, shutting off the TV mid-show, while some guy outside banged on the front door yelling, "I know you're in there, buddy." Dad timed us. Once everything was dark, no talking, no moving, no looking out the windows. We'd sit there until Dad did his owl hoot, which meant all clear. Sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes almost an hour. Afterwards, he'd high-five us and go, "Real ninjas couldn't do better." He told us stealth mode was top secret. Never tell your teachers, your friends, nobody. Other people wouldn't understand. For years, I believed him. When I was 8, I asked Dad why we had to hide so much. He said some annoying guy kept bothering our family, and stealth mode was how we dealt with him. I felt proud we had a secret skill that could outsmart bad guys. By the time I was 10, I heard the voice outside yell something about a bet and $20. I tugged Dad's sleeve and whispered, "Is the bad guy trying to steal our money?" Dad shushed me so hard I flinched. When I was 12, I broke the window rule, peeked through the blinds, and saw a completely normal guy in a polo shirt standing on the porch rubbing his forehead. He didn't look like a criminal. He looked like someone's tired uncle. At 13, I told Dad I was just going to open the door and tell the guy to leave us alone. The color left his face. "You absolutely cannot do that." That was the first time stealth mode didn't feel like a game. By 15 or 16, it barely happened anymore. But when it did, Dad would peek through the blinds looking guilty. Mom just shook her head from the couch and muttered something under her breath. I was 17 and home alone when I heard it. "I know you're in there. It's been 12 years, man." I opened the front door. The guy nearly fell backwards. Normal-looking dude, middle-aged, holding a crumpled piece of paper. "Oh, hi. Is your dad home? I'm his old college roommate." He held up the paper. "Your old man bet me $20 Michael Jordan wouldn't win his 6th ring. That was 1998. I've been knocking on this door ever since." He handed me the IOU, both their signatures, right there at the bottom. I left it on the kitchen table. Mom saw it first and laughed so hard she had to hold the counter. Dad picked it up, read it, put it back down, and the first thing out of his mouth was, "So now he knows someone's home." Then he turned off the kitchen light and got under the table. We were never in danger. My dad just lost a bet because of the greatest of all time. A teenager walked up to my food truck and ordered a hot dog, and while I was turned around making it for him, he reached his hand into my tip jar and took out some money. He started telling me about his new PlayStation and how excited he was to play it, just trying to seem normal, and when I turned back around, he told me he needs to run to his car to get cash for the hot dog. He walked off with my $30, and by the time I noticed, he was already gone. I was mad but couldn't do anything about it, until a few days later, a woman walked up to my truck. She asked me, "Did a young man steal from your tip jar a few days ago?" And when I told her yes, she looked over her shoulder and said, "Miles, come out here right now." The same teenager who took my tip money stepped out with his head low. The woman said, "I'm his mother. My son wasn't raised like that. He's sorry." The kid apologized, and the woman said, "And to show you he's sorry, he's going to give you some money." The teenager started crying as he opened his wallet and pulled out $400, saying, "I sold my PlayStation to pay you back, sir." I told him he didn't have to pay me back, but his mom just put the $400 in my tip jar and said, "My son needs to know if he takes things from people, things will be taken from him." My mom told me I was 1 in 1 million, but at 25 years old, I learned the truth. When I was born, doctors noticed my right leg was abnormally stronger than the other. They lied to my mom and ruled it out as a deformity. As I got older, I got into soccer and had naturally stronger kicks, but my left leg was in severe pain because it wasn't being utilized properly. I had to work out my left leg more so I could even them out, but it took the life out of me. When I started dating my now wife, we were on a hiking trip, and the entire time I was out of breath. I revealed to her I had lost all feeling in my left leg. She was so furious I hid that from her, and we flew to America. After tests for weeks and weeks, I finally got a conclusive answer about my leg. Unfortunately, in the womb, I had a twin. They were absorbed into my leg. I was asked if I wanted to remove the muscle mass from my leg, but I said I'd rather keep it. My leg is the only thing that gives my twin life. After my girlfriend and I came home from vacation, she said, "Someone cooked here." "What do you mean?" She pointed at the stove where a dirty pot sat with dried food crusted on the sides. There was red sauce splattered on the wall behind it. Then I saw what really scared her, a stain on the white counter that looked like dried blood that wasn't there when we left. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911 because someone cooked a meal and left blood on our counter while we were gone. 2 police officers showed up within 10 minutes. They searched every room looking for an intruder, living room, the basement, nothing. Then they went upstairs to the bathroom. I looked over her shoulder and saw dark stains in the bathtub. There was an empty prescription bottle on the floor. "You two need to wait outside. We're calling forensics." We sat in my car and watched as people in white suits started going in and out of our house. After an hour, Officer Lewis came back to our car. His face was grim. "We need to ask you some questions. Do either of you have family with access to your house?" "Just my mom," I said. "She has a spare key, but she lives at Sunset Manor, the assisted living place on Oak Street." He walked back to the house and made a phone call. 20 minutes later, an ambulance arrived arrived and we saw them roll out a black body bag on a stretcher. An officer came up to us. "We found a body in your upstairs bedroom," he said. "An elderly woman. We believe it's your mother." The world started spinning. "That's impossible." He pulled out his phone and made a call and started laughing hysterically. "They said your mother walked out and no one noticed she was gone until now." I gasped as he continued to explain what happened. "My mom walked 4 miles from the nursing home to our house and got in using her spare key. She must have fallen multiple times, which is why there was blood everywhere. Then she hit her head and died." I caught a 4-year-old licking the soap dispenser in my preschool bathroom. "What are you doing?" He looked extremely scared. "Don't tell anyone about this. I won't do it again. It was a dare from my friend." I was weirded out but just shrugged it off because he was a good kid and never misbehaved. Looking back, I should have called his parents, because the next day, I caught him pumping soap straight into his mouth. This time, I told him off. "You're not allowed to go to the bathroom by yourself again." He looked sad, but nodded. But the next day, I found 3 soap bottles stuffed in his cubby, and when I went to go find him and confront him, the janitor stopped me. I caught that soap kid drinking from the dispenser again. I ran from bathroom to bathroom, trying to find him, and eventually, I found him sitting on the sink, while bubbles foamed out of the corners of his mouth. I rushed him to the nurse. While she inspected him, I asked, "Why do you keep eating soap?" Suddenly, he started crying. A kid at nap time said my mouth smelled really bad. My big sister told me soap cleans the inside of your mouth. I didn't want him to say it again when we were sleeping next to each other. The school counselor pulled the other kid aside, and by the end of the week, Noah had his best friend napping next to him instead. Kids are weird. I thought my student was mute. Turns out he'd been speaking the entire time. Kai was a new boy in my art class who was pale and way too skinny for an 8-year-old. When I welcomed him, he flinched backwards, but his mom explained he was just shy because he was mute and chronically ill. As soon as she left, Kai sat down and got to work. Within minutes, I looked over and he was already done. It was a gray house, but the grass was purple. I laughed and showed him the green, but his face stayed completely serious. Every class after that, Kai painted that gray house, but with colors that made 0 sense. Orange sky one day, then an indigo dog. After 3 weeks of classes, I noticed he looked thinner, which didn't make sense for such a short time. He could barely hold the paintbrush steady anymore. By the 4th week, the kid could barely sit up straight in his chair. I asked his mother about it when she picked him up. She explained, "The doctors say it's normal progression for his condition." The paintings kept getting stranger with pink grass and lavender skies and emerald suns, while Kai kept looking worse with these dark circles under his eyes that looked almost black. After he painted one with burgundy clouds and ultraviolet rain, he didn't show up for an entire week. When he finally came back, his mother was basically holding him up as they walked in. I got suspicious, so after school, I spread out his paintings all out on my desk and started looking at every single wrong color because it seemed like a pattern. Purple appeared 8 times, orange 6 times, always on specific objects and never on the house itself. I wrote down just the first letters of each wrong color, and suddenly everything clicked when I saw it spelled poison. I reached for the next painting and saw please. I could barely focus as I decoded the next few: help, then hurt, then the one that made me panic. Tomorrow gone. I was crying and dialing 911 at the same time, screaming into the phone, "A child is being systematically poisoned by his parents." He spelled it out in paintings. The dispatcher heard how hysterical I was and sent everyone immediately. The detective looked at the paintings and the color code I'd figured out, and his whole expression changed. They raced to Kai's house and found him unconscious in his bedroom. After sending him to the hospital and running tests, they found that his parents were poisoning him, which made him mute because they wanted to control his life. Christmas Eve, me and my sister woke up to a loud bang outside our basement window. When we tried to get closer, our dad stopped us. "Stay down here. Don't come upstairs no matter what you hear." He rushed upstairs to lock the doors. Our mom pulled us close and covered my ears, but I could still hear people shouting outside. Police lights started bouncing off the snow on the window. My dad was gone for what felt like forever. When he finally came back downstairs, he wasn't alone. A man in a full Santa suit walked in behind him. "Don't worry, my sleigh crashed in the snow outside, and these nice police officers are helping me dig it out." He sat on the floor between us and pulled presents out of his bag. My sister held hers up to him. "Is this one really for me?" He put his hand on her head. "Of course it is. Santa brought it just for you." We opened them while he sang Christmas songs. Every time the sirens got louder, he sang louder. When they finally stopped, he stood up and dusted off his knees. "I have to go deliver presents to the other kids." I hugged him and went to sleep that night thinking I was the luckiest kid in the world. I was 17 when my dad told me what really happened. A gang broke into the house across the street that night, and 3 people were killed right outside our window. The man who lived next door heard us crying through the walls. He put on a Santa costume he had in his closet, walked over, and stayed with us until it was safe. The teacher's gun went off and my whole class started running the race. With 100 yards left, me and my bully were tied first. I pushed as hard as I could and felt myself start to overtake him, but that's when he stuck his leg out. He tripped me, and I fell down. He looked back at me and smirked and just kept running. He crossed the finish line and looked back at me, pumping his fists in the air, and pointed at me as I got up and finished second. I told my teacher, "He tripped me." me, but she shrugged and said, "I'm sorry, but I didn't see it." My bully called me a loser and took his gold medal, putting it in my face and saying, "I bet you wish you were me." But then he went to stand on the podium. It was his first step since he crossed the finish line, and as soon as he put his foot down, he started screaming. He dropped to the floor crying and clutched his knee. "It hurts, it hurts." Our teacher immediately called the school nurse, who asked, "Does it hurt when I do this?" She gently pressed his knee and he started crying in pain. I found out that when he tripped me, he'd rotated his leg, and when I caught it, the force of me sprinting traveled through his foot and into his rotated knee. All the impact went into his ACL, and when his legs turned and he kept sprinting, the now damaged ACL fully tore. He finished because of adrenaline, but now he couldn't stand on the podium and had to be carried away while he cried in pain, and I took his gold medal instead. At 3 a.m., I walked upstairs in my pajamas, pounded on my neighbor's door, and he answered, still holding the vacuum. "Can you please shut that damn thing off? I'm trying to sleep." He looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "It's the evening, man." I stared at him. "It's 3 a.m. It's my evening. I work nights. I get home. I eat. I clean. I go to bed at 8. That's my evening. Deal with it." He shut the door in my face and started vacuuming again. I'd filed 3 complaints with a landlord who kept promising to have a word. I'd thumped the ceiling with a broom handle until my hands went numb, but now I was declaring war. On Friday, I stopped at Home Depot and walked out with the biggest leaf blower they had. When I got home, I set an alarm for 7:55 and went to sleep through the vacuum noises. Saturday at 8 a.m. sharp, I plugged in the leaf blower and pulled the trigger. The ceiling shook. I heard a thump, a crash, and a grown man sprinting above me. He pounded on his floor, but I kept the trigger down. 3 minutes later, he was at my door hammering and screaming over the engine noise. I gave it another minute, cut the engine, and opened up. His hair was straight up, and he was wearing one sock. "What the hell are you doing? It is 8 in the morning." I waited for him to run out of breath. "It's my evening. Deal with it." He opened his mouth twice and gave up both times. He said he was calling the property manager and stormed back upstairs. 20 minutes later, the property manager was at my door. I pointed at the leaf blower, then at the ceiling. I asked him to pull the noise complaint log for the apartment upstairs. He scrolled and kept scrolling and kept scrolling. 47 nights on file. He thanked me and went upstairs to have a real word. The moving truck was in the parking lot by Monday morning. I watched him load the vacuum in last while I petted my leaf blower. Good boy. Our principal lined up the entire school in the hallway on prom morning to give everyone a breathalyzer test. He marched down the line in his blazer, holding the device above his head like a trophy. "I heard someone in this school thinks they're drinking at prom tonight. I will find that punk before lunch." He pointed the breathalyzer at us one at a time as he walked. "If you confess now, you're getting suspended. If I find out from this machine, you're getting expelled." He stopped at the first kid in line and told him to blow. Beep, 0. Same with the next kid. Then it was my turn. I blew into it. Beep, 0. The principal's face went red. Somebody in this hallway is lying to me. The next kid up was a freshman girl. She took the breathalyzer with both hands like she was holding a baby bird. She put her mouth on it and sucked. The machine made a wet wheezing sound. The principal lost it. "What are you doing?" Her eyes filled up. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I've never used one before." He snatched it out of her hand. "This is how you do it." He held it up in front of his face so the whole hallway could see and blew into it as hard as he could. The hallway went silent. The machine beeped. The display lit up. Then it kept lighting up. 3 lights, 4 lights, a red light at the end. The principal stared at it. His mouth opened a little. He blew into it again. Same result. Worse, actually. A junior in the back let out one short laugh. Then the whole hallway erupted. The vice principal walked over, slid the breathalyzer out of his hand, and told him to head to the office. The principal turned to leave, took one step, and swayed to the side like a sailboat. He caught himself on a locker. The vice principal had to grab his elbow and walk him out. The next morning, he showed up to school for round 2, and a cop was waiting at the front doors, holding a breathalyzer of his own. My older sister returned from her dream college and said she's never going back there again. She'd stolen money from our parents to afford the tuition in Spain, and when they forgave her, she demanded they also buy her business class flights, or she wasn't going. They agreed because she always got everything she ever wanted. But then she came back midway through the semester and wouldn't speak to anyone. I found her on the kitchen floor sobbing into her hands. But when I asked her what happened, Mom pulled me aside and whispered, "My sister went through something traumatic and I shouldn't ask her about it." That night, my sister announced she wasn't going back to Spain. I'd given up the money I was going to use for my first car to help with her fees. But she was crying so hard, I understood. Every night, I heard her sobbing through the walls, and she walked around the house with sunken, depressed eyes. When Mom made her food, she couldn't even bring herself to eat it and just stayed inside all day. One time, I suggested she could take online classes in the same college and still get her degree, but she looked at me with red eyes and said, "You have no idea what I went through. I can never even look at that place again." I backed up and told her I was sorry, and one day my parents asked me to loan them $2,000. They said my sister had found the strength to go back to college, but it had to be a different one. I told them them I'd think about it, because I needed to know the reason she left before giving up the money. That night, I walked into her room and finally asked her what happened in Spain. She looked at me with tears streaming down her face and handed me her phone. I looked at the screen and saw something about a shop getting closed down, but had no idea what it meant. Then my sister looked me in the eyes and said, "My favorite churro spot near the college closed down. I can't go back there and walk past it knowing it's closed. It's too traumatizing." I looked at her crying and realized this entire meltdown was because one of the 50 dessert places in her area had closed down. I brought my dad's war medal to a pawn shop and the owner tased me. My dad passed away 2 months ago and I needed rent money. I set the medal on the counter and asked what it was worth. In a thick Russian accent, he asked where my dad got it. I told him a Russian oligarch gave it to him years ago. He asked where my dad was born. I cut him off. "Indiana, just tell me what it's worth." He said, "Let me check," and walked into the back. I could hear him on the phone, same accent but faster. He came back holding something behind his back. An electrical current ripped through my body and I hit the floor. He grabbed the medal off the counter and bolted out the back. I chased him into the alley. He was old and I was faster. He made it to his car, locked the doors, and cranked the engine. I put my elbow through the driver's window, grabbed his collar, and reached for the keys. He floored it and dragged me half a block with my feet scraping the asphalt. I bit his cheek, ripped out the keys, and the car spun into a curb. I punched him, took the medal back, and walked home bleeding from both arms. 2 men in suits were standing at my front door. The first one held up a badge. "CIA, we just want to talk." I blocked the doorway. "That medal was my dad's. I don't have to show you anything." The lead agent stepped closer. "If it's stolen property, you do." I pulled out my dad's birth certificate and held it up. "It's not stolen. He was born in Gary, Indiana. A Russian oligarch gave it to him." The agent took one look, tore it in half, and held up the pieces. "This is the exact paper they used to forge documents during the Cold War." I looked at the 2 halves of my dad's name sitting in a stranger's hands and nodded. I sat in a cold room for 6 hours. The lead agent finally walked in, set the medal on the table, and opened a file. "Your father's real name was Dmitry Kespov, Russian spy turned international thief, wanted in 17 countries." He closed the file and slid the medal across the table. I brought it in to make rent. Turns out it was worth 17 countries. A man walked into my hardware store with 3 minutes until closing time and walked up to the counter with a thick rope. He wouldn't make eye contact and his hands were shaking. I realized what the rope was for immediately and told him, "Sir, I have a ladder in the back you might want as well. That rope won't hold what I think you want it to hold unless it's anchored correctly." The man looked at me with these sad, lifeless eyes, and I could tell he knew that I understood. He nodded and quietly said he'll take the ladder. So I went into the back and browsed through every ladder, picking out the strongest one I could. I brought it back and sat it down on the floor, then added it to the total. The man thanked me, but just as I was about to ring him up, 8 p.m. hit, and the screen with his items shut off. The register auto locked. The system had timed out for the night, and I could no longer take any payment. I told him I was sorry, but I couldn't sell him the rope and ladder. He looked up for the first time. "Did you do that on purpose?" I didn't answer, and just pointed at the coffee shop across the street. "That stays open till 10. Will you have a cup with me?" He nodded, and as we walked out together, I realized that sometimes the kindest things people do for you are the things you never see. After deciding I was going to take my life, I decided to order pizza as my last meal on Earth. But when the pizza arrived, the receipt had a really weird note attached to it. "Please enjoy your last meal on us. We're so sorry." I immediately freaked out because I'd never told anyone about my plan, but when I looked closer at the pizza and the receipt, I realized I'd simply gotten someone else's order. I was relieved, but the words "last meal" still stuck out to me, so I put the address on the receipt into my GPS and drove over with the pizza. If this was actually someone's final meal, they needed to have it. I knocked on the door, and a woman in tears answered. I said, "Your pizza was delivered to my house. I wanted to bring it back." Her eyes lit up, and she immediately lunged to hug me. I was taken aback, but then I saw an old man in a bed behind her, hooked up to oxygen tubes and barely breathing. The woman explained through tears he was dying, and that used to take her to this pizza place every Friday, her whole childhood. This meal was his last request on Earth, as he wanted to connect with his daughter one final time. I was heartbroken, and gave her the pizza, and wished her well. I turned to leave, proud I'd done at least one good thing before taking my life. But then the old man called out to me. I turned around, and he was using all of his strength to motion his arm for me to come in. "There's enough pizza for one more. I'm too weak to eat much anyway," he joked. I felt myself tear up, and the woman held the door for me as I walked inside. We shared the pizza, laughing and crying at his final stories. And when I asked him, "Why did you invite me in?" he replied, "I've lived long enough to know when someone needs a friend." I held the woman's hand as she said goodbye to her dad forever, and in his death, I found a reason to stay alive. Now every Friday, me and the woman have pizza together to honor him. My mother walked into the kitchen holding a calendar with a date circled in red. "You have 1 month until you no longer exist." After she left left my little brother, Theo looked at me and said, "What does that mean?" I choked on my own voice, trying to explain. Mom and Dad have this rule. Sometimes they pick someone in the family, and that person has to go away. They burn all your photos and throw out all your stuff, and nobody's allowed to say your name ever again. Theo's face crumpled. Like Uncle Jack? Yeah, buddy, like Uncle Jack. My father started that night. He took a photo off the mantle of me and Theo at the beach and burned it in the kitchen sink while Theo watched. Then he threw out a bag of my clothes, then my books, then my shoes. Theo started crying and ran to the closet. I followed him and found him holding a photo of the two of us he'd stolen from the burn pile. "I don't want to forget you," he whispered. That's when I knew I needed to find a way to fight this for Theo's sake. While my parents were busy burning my schoolwork, I snuck into my father's office and started digging. I didn't know if I was going to find something, but in the back of a drawer, I found Uncle Jack's email and begged him to help me. Then I heard a noise behind me, and my mother appeared in the doorway. "Rule breaker! Rule breaker!" Dad stormed in and said, "Now your removal happens tonight." They dragged me toward the back door while I screamed and thrashed. But then suddenly we saw red and blue lights, and my parents looked afraid, so I knew they weren't the ones who called them. The front door suddenly opened, and Uncle Jack walked in. My mother screamed, "You're not real anymore!" Uncle Jack said, "I'm real, but you're about to wish I wasn't." That's when the police walked in behind them. My father tried to run away, but an officer tackled him to the ground and cuffed him. My mother was cuffed seconds later, still screaming that Jack didn't exist. I ran to Uncle Jack's side and hid behind him. "How did you get here so quickly?" I asked. "I hid the email address in the drawer 6 years ago, on the night they erased me. I've been living in one town over ever since, checking that inbox every morning, waiting for one of you to find it."
আমার নিজের মনে হইতেছে আমি কিং বাদশা।
বেলা শেষে পেন্সিল ভাষা পেল কি?
কেমন মনমোয়া হইয়া থাকিস? কি হয়েছে আমার বল।
ঠিক তোমার বাচ্চা।
पलट के देखेगी।
এমনি সূত্রাবো আমি জানি না।
আমার কাছে আইডিয়া আছে। জামশেদ চাচার খবরে নিয়ে গেছে মানে?
উনার খেতে ঢুকছিল তাই।
আলার পুদায় পোলাপাইন ডাক। আমি তোমারে হারাইতে দিব না।
এবার যাও। বাচ্চা, আজকে তোমার কি হয়েছে বলো তো?
আবার চুরি করছে। আজকে একদিন কি তার একদিন আমি তার কাছে টাকা খাইলাম। আমার জমা কেন? হ্যাঁ, আমার সংসারের টাকা চুরি কইরা, জমানো টাকা চুরি কইরা তুই কি করলি? এত বেলা করে ঘুমাইতে চলবো?
তুরু এত ভালো একটা স্বপ্ন দেখতেছিলাম, আর আমার সং কইলা না, একদিন আইসো আমার পারফরমেন্স দেখতে আইসো, দেখো মানুষ কেমনে তালি দেয়।
সন্ধে আকাশে খুঁজে আজ
না মানে এই হ্যাঁ ইয়ে ওই যে সিনেমা, শাহরুখ খানের সিনেমা দেখতে দেখতে বড় হইছি না।
ভয় পাচ্ছেন কেন? সামনে আসেন। আরে আরো কাছে আসেন।
আসে খুঁজে আজ জানালায় জোড়া চোখ
আগে দায়িত্ব ছিল না, তাই হারানোর ভয়ও ছিল না। আর এখন দায়িত্ব আছে, তুই ছাড়া কিন্তু আমার কেউ নাই। হ্যাঁ,
আমি জায়গায় থাকতে পারবো না, তুইও ঘুমাই পড়।
আচ্ছা আমি যাইতেছি।
কি সমস্যা? বাচ্চা আজকে তোমার কি হয়েছে বলো তো?
যখন আমি খোলা চুলে দেখি এই দিলে तुम नहीं समझोगे प्रिया।
আব্বাও যে আমাদের এভাবে ছেড়ে চলে যাবে।
বোমে মরিচ,
খুব ভালো হয়।
বোমে মরিচ দেন। দেখতো ফুচকাটা হলো কিনা।
একটু নেন না।
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, মামা আসুক তারপর শুরু করি।
আমরা সবাই মিলে তোরে মাফ করে দিল, আল্লাহ তাআলা তোর জীবনও মাফ করে।
সুস্থ মানে হ্যাঁ নাচবেন না কোনো বিবেকবান সুস্থ
কারণ এরকম ব্যবহার করছিল ওই দিন।
পানিটা খাও। আহা বসতে দে, বসেন না। রিক্সার ব্যাটারি ডাউন হয়ে গেছে।
বসেন বসেন।
মা, তুমি এসব চিন্তা করো কেন?
এক নাম্বারই দিছি, তোমার আম্মা ভালো হয়ে যাবে। চল।
ধন্যবাদ। একটা মিনিট, আপনি মেডিকেলেরই কিছু একটা ব্যবসা করেন?
তুই জানো না কি করে?
কিছু খাবা না?
আপনার কথা শেষ করেন, তারপর খাবেন।
আসতে পারলি না, কাম কাজ গুছাইছো কিছু?
না তুমি গুছাইছো?
আমিও তো কিছু গুছাইতে পারিনি।
নতুন ডাইরেক্টর আইছে, আইসে পর বলে মেডিকেলের অবস্থা ভালো, পাবলিক সব দেই হেনে যায়।